get started, and we're going to open up with our host that makes all of this possible, which is Chuck, who is the owner-operator of the Chick-fil-A at River City Marketplace. That makes all of this possible. And so I will turn it over to Chuck.
Hey, welcome. I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I had a phone call earlier this week, actually on Saturday, and a young man named Bill, he's an operator at Lake Park, Chick-fil-A in Lake Park, Georgia. And Bill was a host at Cracker Barrel when Claudia was pregnant with our first child. And we went into Cracker Barrel one night, and I saw him there. He was seating us at the table and had a big smile. And I looked at him and I said, "You need to work at Chick-fil-A." And now he's a Chick-fil-A operator. So anyway, at River City, our vision is to be a leader in the community, company, and competition. And when I think about leader, and I think about like each of these spaces, this is one of the activities we do that invest in the community. Nick Saban will talk about leadership, and he'll talk about it in a way of like how we serve others, and that's his definition of leadership. And so on the football team, there's 11 men on each side of the ball, and they serve each other by doing the right thing every single down. And so, but also it extends much further than football. And so on Saturday, Bill called, and he was telling me he was driving to Lake City. I'm like, "Why are you driving to Lake City?" And he's like, "A couple of the guys didn't get their food delivery. They're going to have to shut down." And I was like, wow, like a selfless thing. You know, Bill's got his food, he didn't have to worry about it, but he was worried about his friends. So he went and did something for his friends that they couldn't do for themselves. And so when we think about the leadership and like, you know, how do we do this or why do we do this? It's like, hey, how does Chick-fil-A help? So there's another thing we do a 5K in the springtime. And in that 5K, we invite people to participate and do fundraising. We pay for the race for ball teams or community groups that might not can afford a 5K to raise money. So they get to raise money without all the expense. So that's one of the things we do in the springtime. So Rick's talking about triggers tonight, and I gotta tell you one of my triggers is going to Chick-fil-A and seeing a pink milkshake poster. Like, makes me want to eat a peach milkshake. So, yeah, okay, I'm done with my trigger speech. Love you, man.
The peach is not my trigger.
Okay.
At all. Now the peppermint, right? The peppermint chip one you guys got? That's my trigger, but it also leads to another heart attack. So I guess I gotta be careful with that. All right, y'all ready?
Yes.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk about trigger troubles, emotional triggers. Has anybody ever been emotionally triggered by something? Yes. We all have them, don't we? And let me say this to you. The fact that you get triggered is not a problem. It's called being human. It's called being human. Because we are going to get triggered by things. Got it? If an 18-wheeler is coming across the interstate at you at 90 miles an hour, you're probably going to get what? Triggered. And you want that trigger to work in that situation. But when you hear, "Honey, we need to talk," you better regulate your trigger in that situation. You got it? So we're going to talk about what are triggers, and you can kind of explore your own, and we'll get the slide up here about triggers. We're going to talk about triggers tonight, kind of get an understanding of them, and then my great teacher and mentor, Dr. Lori Gordon, she referred to the emotional reaction when we are triggered. A trigger actually isn't the feeling. The trigger is something that creates the reaction, got it? And her term for that reaction was an emotional allergy. I like that term. That something happens and we have an emotional reaction to it. Her term for that is emotional allergy. And we'll talk about an emotional allergy loop tonight as well. And then how do you control those triggers, right? So at their core, emotional triggers are stimuli, external or internal, that activate a strong emotional reaction rooted in earlier experiences. Where do they come from? Your history. Your emotional triggers are not about that person, mostly. They're about something from your past that you're unconscious about. Because these reactions are about history, memory. And all of your long-term memories are actually stored in what's known as the limbic system of the brain, which is on the right side of the brain, which is known as the emotional part of the brain. And so what happens is somebody does something out here, and it triggers in you emotional memory. We'll get into that deeper, right? A slight critique at work might feel like a personal attack. A partner's silence might plunge you into abandonment fears. What makes, if you push me back, I haven't finished reading yet. Thank you. What makes the response to trigger is not the stimulus itself, but the constellation of what? Memory and meaning. What does it mean to you? That's the memory. So this trigger has meaning and memory to you. All right? That's that reaction. And we've attached it. All right? The last part here is basically what we're really doing is treating a person in this moment as if they're the enemy from the past. To make it simple, that is what your brain is doing. Now, next slide, Dr. Lori Gordon referred to that intense reaction as an emotional allergy. And her definition here is that an emotional allergy is an intense reaction. All right? It's an intense emotional reaction to an event in the what? In the present. That is similar to your past history or programming. What are some of the things that trigger you? Anybody? What's that?
I don't think we're brave enough to say it.
Oh, not brave enough. If my wife, if I say something and my wife is short, I get triggered. I've learned where it comes from. My stepmother. And in that moment, my brain is reacting to her as if she's my stepmother. And I start to treat her in that moment as if she's who? Because my brain had not made a distinction between who she was and what that memory was. So now I'm treating her as if she is that person. And I had to get to a point where I could say, that's not Edna, that's Luella. What she's doing was similar, but it wasn't her. But my brain is reacting to her as if it is. That make sense? Yeah. If she raised her voice, I'd get insecure and shut down. Why? Well, because if someone starts to raise their voice in my house growing up, that usually led to somebody being abused or shocked with a cow prod. Yeah. So what I learned was, shut down. Yeah. Don't talk. Withdraw. Because that's what I was programmed to do. And so when I first got married, I wasn't a healthy mature adult, I was an immature adult. And so I didn't know about emotional triggers. And of course, I was studying psychology early on, but if you have a BA in psychology, you're just dangerous. You can't do much with that degree, actually. You can say, if you want to go into the field of psychology, you got to get a master's to do anything really well with that and make money. Got it? I went on and got 2 masters because I'm an overachiever, and I got a doctorate, all right? But in the early days, I had enough knowledge to be dangerous. And let me show you how stupid I was. We were in an argument about something. Now I'm in my doctoral work, I think, at the time. No, I was in last year my master's degree there in Texas at seminary. And we got into an argument about something. She said something. Now looking back at it, it was something similar my stepmother used to say to me. And then I reported back. I retorted back. And then she said to me, because I used to work at a psych hospital, she said, I am not one of your patients. Stupid. I'm admitting it up front. I looked at her and said, well, you should be. I know. This wonderful, loving man was that stupid? Yes, I was. So, an emotional allergy is an intense reaction to a situation that's similar to an event that was painful in our past, but it's not the same situation in the present. All right? Like a biological allergy. Where a harmless pollen triggers an outside immune response, an emotional allergy distorts neutral or benign stimuli into threats grounded in earlier relational hurt. I think you get the idea. That make sense?
Yes.
Now, what is a trigger loop? All right, that's the next slide here. This is the clinical side of it, and they're going to make it easy. Got it? What happens is something happens, and then you end up in a trigger loop. Something triggers you, right? Some stressor, some emotional reaction happens in your brain. Got it? And that reaction in your brain ends up with some reactions. Got it? And what happens is whenever something happens and you see it, your brain's like, what? That little jerk reaction activates the amygdala, the animal brain, which is where your fight, flight, or freeze comes from. That stress response to the brain. So now, what ends up happening is you're triggered into an emotional reaction. The amygdala pushes you into fight, flight, or freeze. When your brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze, it's designed to do this. The thinking, rational part of your brain, which is up here called the prefrontal cortex, gets hijacked and shut down. This is why when you're arguing from the animal brain, because animals have that part of the brain as well, if you argue from the animal brain, you will get animal outcome. You argue from the animal brain, you're going to get animal outcome. Only humans have a well-developed prefrontal cortex. Goes from here to about here on both halves of the brain, the data brain and the feeling brain. It's on both halves because though I may be triggered into a reaction, I can take a deep breath in that moment, push my heart rate under 100, because whenever you go into fight, flight, and freeze, your brain is giving you adrenaline, epinephrine, and norepinephrine to get you ready to what? Fight or flight, right? And when that happens, your heart rate goes up. So the way you access the prefrontal cortex again and speak the truth in love and be slow to anger, quick to hear, so to speak, that requires maturity. You've got to reaccess the prefrontal cortex, all right? So what happens is the amygdala gets triggered, and then your neurotransmitters like cortisol, stress response, adrenaline, starts flooding the body. Now your prefrontal cortex is hijacked, and then lastly, you're not managing your emotional reactions well, all right? And so you've got to get out of this loop, and it's a biological loop as well. That makes sense? Because what your brain is doing is going to have behavior around it. All right, so let me kind of show you what we call an emotional allergy infinity loop, all right? Hang on, let me put this down. All right, so here's a simple way of understanding it. There is some trigger behavior, right? And whenever your brain sees this trigger behavior, we go into an immediate emotional allergy. Got it? You are now triggered by that thing. So now you're in an emotional allergy. And that emotional allergy is an intense reaction. Well, that intense reaction has an immediate reactive behavior. You can think about something in your relationship with somebody. They do something, some behavior, you're now in an intense reaction, and that leads you into a what? A reactive behavior. Here to here is about 1/200th of a second. It's automatic. You're doing something. Got it? Well, Luella sees my reactive behavior, right? So what does my reactive behavior become to her? It becomes a trigger behavior. So she sees my reactive behavior, which is a trigger to her. Well, her trigger, guess what it has? An emotional allergy, right? So she's in her emotional allergy, and guess what her allergy does? It has what? A reactive behavior. I see her reaction. What is her reaction to me? It's a trigger. So now I am re-triggered by whatever she was doing, and guess what that does? It triggered my allergy, which then has a what? A reactive behavior. She sees that triggers her allergy again, and she has a reaction. And does anybody know math well enough to know what symbol is this? Dr. Gordon, my great teacher and mentor, called it an emotional allergy infinity loop. Great name, isn't it? And you can stay in those loops for years. They destroy each other and they whittle away the relationship over time. That makes sense? And unhealthy people, immature people, don't have the maturity of self-regulation yet to get out of the trigger loop, because you have to have self-management, self-control. But you can't have self-management and self-control if you're not self-aware. 2019 was a national study released. I remember reading it to Luella. And in this national study of Americans, 78% of the people studied across the country in this national study reported they had high self-awareness. That's pretty good. However, that same study also revealed those 78% of people in America say they have high self-awareness. In reality, only 26% of Americans actually do. Which only goes to further validate that America, as a nation, is adolescent. We are. Books are being written about it. We are. We have emotional children raising children. And you can be a rocket scientist and still emotionally mature. Does that make sense? Because maturity is not about intellect. There are very intellectually brilliant people who are highly immature. All right? And when I got married 41 years ago, I was emotionally a child. And the reason I was an emotional child is because I was raised by two emotionally immature adults till the day they died, and they did not have the ability to raise their 4 kids, Kathy, Rick, Don, and Paul, to be healthy, mature adults, because you can't raise your kids to be something that you're not. Because you can't give what you don't possess. Does that make sense? Sadly, I had to learn it as an adult. God had to put people in my life to help me get where I needed to be. All right? And so that's why a lot of my work and my training, my work and my teaching comes from my own personal journey of growth. All right? And it was all post-doctoral work, most of it. So then, here's how it really works. You ready? Luella raises her voice to me in frustration, which triggers an allergy in me. So what do? I shut down. She sees me shut down, so that triggers her allergy, which then means she starts to speak up. And when she starts to speak up with a little more frustration, it triggers my allergy, so I start to distance myself and withdraw emotionally from her. Maybe not as a physic, but I do start to withdraw emotionally and shut down, which then triggers her allergy, so she starts to talk louder, which then triggers my allergy, so I go into the next room, which then triggers her allergy, so she follows me. You got it? But it's not the trigger that's the problem. Remember we said in that one paragraph, the trigger is about meaning and what? Memory. Here's how it really works. See, in between the intense reaction and the behavior, 2 things exist. Your beliefs about the trigger and your feelings about it. And over here, Luella has beliefs and feelings as well. What really is the problem is right here. So here's how it really works. She raises her voice in frustration, which triggers an allergy in me based on my past history that when someone starts to raise their voice, somebody is about to get hurt or harmed, which creates a feeling of fear in me, insecurity. So I start to shut down and not talk, which triggers an allergy in her that when someone doesn't talk to you, you might get abandoned, which creates feelings of anger because she doesn't be abandoned, so she starts to talk louder, which triggers an allergy in me that when people start to talk louder, and the belief is somebody's probably going to get hurt pretty soon. And so it creates more fear in me, so I withdraw and shut down internally, and that creates a fear in her, more fear in her that when people aren't talking to you and they do shut down, you're about to be abandoned and rejected, which creates anger in her, so she starts to talk louder and pursue, which triggers an allergy in me, which says when people start to get angry with you, probably you're going to get shot with a cow prod, so now it creates more fear, so I go to another room. And when I go to another room, that triggers an allergy in her that when people start to walk away from you, you probably are going to be abandoned and rejected, which now creates more fear and then anger, and she starts to pursue me, which now triggers anger in me. Because now I'm being pursued because I don't want to be shot with a cow prod, and so now I turn and face you. And that's the loop. It's this right here. What does it mean? What does it mean? When you see that face, your brain tells you it means something. What does it mean to you? Does that make sense? That's the part you have to figure out. You have to slow this whole loop down and shut it off. And I'm not going to tell you how. So let's move on. We'll get back to it. So, we got to identify what are the things that push our buttons, right? What are the things that push our buttons? So, what pushes your buttons? Emotional buttons. And this goes back to Dr. Gary Smalley's work. He called them anger buttons and fear buttons, all right? And he called it a fear loop. Lori called it emotional allergy loop. He called it a fear loop. Different people have different names for the same type of cycle, dance, all right? But what is true, no matter what version you look at, there are two primary fears in the loops. A fear of what? Disconnection, and a fear of what? Loss of control. That I don't have control, and I might be abandoned and rejected. And those are two fears that that humans don't want. We don't want to be abandoned. We don't want to be alone. We fear disconnection. It's primal into the human brain. And we all like having control. The problem is you try and control things you can't control. This is why people lose peace and anger and frustration. You're trying to control something you can't control. This is why people who try and control things they can't control are always frustrated. They lose peace. If you ever meet me out in public, people are like,